In under 1 hour, we've created an entire pitch for our product. We've turned that into a landing page. We've generated a logo. We've set up a wait list so that we can actually start to generate interest and have interviews with anybody who shows up. And we have deployed to the web. If you compare this to how long it previously took, we have done that entire process in 1 hour. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So we're going to use AI tools. We're going to use a specific one called Cursor AI. You don't have to type a single line of code. I'm going to show you my top AI development agent MCP tools that I rely on now after weeks of testing. And you'll walk away with valuable skills and a finished website you can use for your business or offer as a service to other clients. So just a quick introduction to what LeverCast is. We end up building this on the Switch Dimension Build with AI course. Essentially, I can do a brain dump here of whatever I'm thinking, and then I can generate that content so that I can create social media posts for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So my ideas, but with a little bit of grammar and cleanup. Using my voice for computer interaction is a game changer. I can move 4 times faster, and I'm building out entire web apps using just my voice. It really is a big step up for my production process. So then I just hit generate content, and then I get an output that comes back. Now this is of course over the top, but I can change my prompt so that it's more in line with my style of talking. And then I can go and publish across all my different platforms with the click of a button. First up, you're going to need an AI-based code editor. I recommend Cursor, and Windsurf is also a good choice, but we're going to focus on Cursor for this video. They all have very similar workflows, and if you learn one, your knowledge generally applies across each of them. Next up, we're going to open a project. So with the new window open, you'll notice that the root of our folder here is up on the left-hand side. So in here, under this icon, you're going to see all the files and projects in your folder. You can search through your project. This is your version control. This is how you save your project at any given point in time and share it. And then over here on the right is the most important panel, which is the AI panel. So in Cursor, it's the same as Windsurf and kind of the same as Klein. There's a couple of different ways that these operate. So you have basically a chat window and you have a style of chat. So you can either ask the model some questions. So if you're trying to figure out how to build something, or you're trying to learn how the code works in your current project, you would set it to ask mode, and it doesn't implement or write any code. And then when you want to use the agent to actually write the code, change file structures, and actually build stuff, you switch into agent mode. It's also worth noting that if you want to use things like MCP servers, which we'll cover in a little bit, you also need to be in agent mode. And there's certain functions that only get carried out in agent mode. So we're going to spend most of our time there. And then you get to choose whichever model that you want. So how do I know what model to choose? Well, there's a variety of different options, and you can also add more in the settings as well. But I tend to default towards the Claude series from Anthropic. They do the best with Next.js and the type of code that I like to write. So that would be either Claude 3.7 Sonnet or Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I've also done a video on using Gemini 2.5 Pro. It's actually really compelling. It's got a huge context window, but I'm finding its integration with Cursor is still lagging, and I get lots of errors and annoying bugs. So if you're starting out, I would say just go for 3.5 or 3.7 for a more comfortable flow. In terms of personalities, Claude 3.5, I default to this a lot because I know how it works. I'm comfortable. It's like working with a colleague that you just know how they're going to react. Claude 3.7 seems to be great. I have some use cases for that, but I find it to be really a little bit too enthusiastic, and it tends to jump ahead and create extra features or change workflows or add new code that I didn't necessarily ask for. What's important here is we find this fine balance between what's vibe coding and traditional handcrafted code. You want to use the model to move fast where it makes sense, but then you want to stop, you want to review, and use AI to help you understand the code that it's written. So if there's certain sections of the code that you don't understand, why is it doing this? What is this particular function? You can use AI to highlight that and teach you as you go. So that's the middle ground between vibe coding and handcrafted code. Now, I also like to use my voice as much as possible instead of typing. It's about 3 or 4 times faster in many cases. And a tool that I like to use is Whisper Flow. Let's create a Next.js project in this folder. And then I just hit send. So it's giving me the default setup here for Next.js. If you haven't heard of Next.js before, it's a really great framework for building out websites, but also full-on applications. So in my course at switchdimension.com, I teach you how to build out entire web apps using this technology. So it's really quick to get started and you can get a site up and running really quickly. So I'm going to run this command. So if you like, you can pop out a terminal so you can see exactly what's going on here. So I click this button here. So it's asking me, do I want turbo pack? In this case, I don't. So I'm just going to hit return. And then would I like to customize the import alias? No. So you'll see I have these other defaults in place that are important. We are going to use TypeScript, Tailwind. We're going to use the app directory, the source directory, and we're going to use ESLint. So straight away, what it's done is set up a whole project. If you look over here in the left-hand side, you have the public directory. That's where all our images are going to be stored. And then the main app you need to worry about is the source directory and the app directory. And then within that, you've got your styling, which is .css, and then you have your page here. So this is the landing page, or the first page that we're going to see that we're going to start to edit. So I'm going to create a new terminal here. I can just go up here and click new terminal, and we have a whole new bash that's opened here. And I can actually run this by typing in npm run dev. But you can also use AI to interact in the terminal. If you don't know what you need to do next, you can ask it here. So I might say something like, by hitting Command K, I could say, how do I run this project? And then it's giving me a prompt here, and then I just hit submit. And then it's giving me the command that I need, npm run dev, and I just hit control return, and then I can return this. So what this is going to do is actually get our project up and running. So it's running on localhost 3001. Usually it'll be 3000. It depends on it if you have one running already. And then if I just click on this, control click, it should open this in my browser, and we've got our website ready to go. Awesome, so you've got your site up and running. And if I pop over here really quickly to save and see your changes instantly, let's put in a little change here. And if I hit Control S, what this does is it hot reloads. You'll see a change happened here in the terminal. And if I go straight over here, you can see that that is now updated here. So any changes we make to the code, we're going to see a live reload on our preview, which makes it just a whole lot easier to work with. So one of the most time-consuming parts of actually creating any kind of a landing page or web page is the copy, because essentially this is sales copy or promotional copy for whatever that you're trying to create. And actually coming up with that and deciding what it's going to be, what your pitch is, your call to action, etc., is probably the most time-consuming part of designing a page. But what if we could accelerate that process for you? In a previous video, I covered the 3 expert approach. You've got a product manager, UX designer, and a software architect. And what we do is we step through a series of prompts where we get these various different experts to ask us questions about our project in order to create our user stories, our design documents, and even our software architecture. So I'm going to link that in the description down below, and you can check that out. If you haven't gone through that process or you haven't fully fleshed out what your idea is, then it's worth stepping through that process first. But essentially what we end up with is a products requirement doc, a UX design doc, and a software spec doc. And we're going to lean on the products requirement doc to be the foundation of building out our page here. If you haven't done this step already, just follow along. You'll see how it all works. So in a new folder called .documentation that I created, I have my LeverCast product management.md. A .md file is a markdown file. It's just a useful and simple way for AI to understand what we're working on. And also it's human readable, of course. So we have our products requirement document. Again, you can get that from the resources in the descriptions if you don't have one, if you just want to go along with this build or create one specific for your project. And the key thing we have here is an elevator pitch for LeverCast. This is an app that we build in the course and community, and we have details about who the app is for, the functional requirements, and all of this will work really well to help design our landing page. It even has some user stories about how it all works together, user interface, etc. So this is going to be really useful for the AI to help us build. So back over here to our AI panel. Again, what we're going to do is start a new chat. Now, you want to start a new chat as often as you can, or when you feel like it makes sense, that the model doesn't need a lot of context for what you spoke about before. You'll also get a warning at the bottom of the page here, which tells you that your context is running out. So context is important because it's the amount of constant working memory that your model has at any given time. So if you start giving instructions at the start of a conversation and expect your model to remember those after having several inputs and several smaller conversations, it's not going to remember the important things. So if something is important, make sure you're adding it to the end of your context window or to your last prompt consistently. We can also create things called rules, which can be added either manually or automatically to remind the AI of what needs to be built. Okay, so next up, we're going to do our seed prompt. So this is pretty important. It's the prompt that kind of starts everything off. So we want to think carefully about this and make sure that we're doing it right. Okay, so I have 3.7 selected. I'm in agent mode, and let's kick off the prompt. I want to create a high conversion landing page for a company called LeverCast, the details of which are attached in the document. And I'd like to add a call to action for a sign up to a waitlist for the product because it hasn't launched yet. Okay, and I'm just going to click send here and see what we get back. So you'll see what the model is doing here. It's basically taking a look at your code base and looking at all the different files that it could potentially work on. I didn't tell it that I wanted to work on a Next.js project. It just basically was able to look and understand the context. It reads through all the pages to understanding what's happening, and then it starts to make some code suggestions. So I highly recommend that you actually check on each page and at least at a high level understand what's going on, so that you can begin to learn about how it's working. And particularly later on, as you get into more advanced projects, if you just vibe code and put in a prompt and don't look at what actually happened, you end up with the model creating folders in the wrong spaces or adding code that may not be secure as you'd like it to be. You're not expected to understand everything that it produces, but I'd encourage you to start to highlight code and try and figure out what everything is doing as you progress. But right now, what we can do is review each file. So let's review the first file that changes were made on. So it says review next file here. So in red, it shows me what's been taken away. In green, it shows me what's being added. So we're actually putting in a new title and description for the page. So let's accept that. That's perfect. And nothing else on this layout page. So let's move to the next file. And then over on the right, you can see all the big blocks of code changes that are happening. You can do two things. You can just click accept each part as you make your way through, or you can accept the whole file. And you can also see any changes that are made here on the right hand side in terms of what's been removed and added. In this case, it's a brand new project. It's low stakes. It's just a basic landing page. I'm happy just to click accept all the changes. Part of working with AI is knowing when to move fast and when to move slow. If I was in a production application, I might actually take my time and make sure I step through each one of those changes to make sure I am happy and it's not making big changes to the rest of your project. We'll also use things like feature branching and Git in order to make sure that we're safely using AI outside of the main repository before we commit back in. And again, that's something that I cover on my course. Now in this case, it's giving me a helpful prompt to actually run my development server, but we've got it running already over here. So I'm just going to say it's running already. Okay, it's letting me know it's done and I have nothing to accept. So let's just check out what it did as a first pass. So this is actually really quite impressive for a one-shot prompt. We have our LeverCast site here, transform ideas into social media content. It's accurately captured exactly what the application does. And we have our waitlist button here. It gives us some features on how it works. It's even created some lovely icons. Why choose LeverCast? It's got the core benefits in place taken from our product requirements doc. And then we've got our waitlist sign up here. Now, when it comes to that contact form or our call to action, I have a couple of different options for pulling in our waitlist. I think at the start of a project, I like to be emailed directly by whoever takes interest so that I can get back to them straight away with more questions or some next steps. Up from that, you could use something like Kit from kit.com. It allows you to set up mailing lists and you can have thousands of subscribers for free. So it's great to get started at a free level. And then also you could use a database like NeonDB or Supabase to connect and actually start recording those emails into a database. This is probably the fastest and easiest way. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. So just sign up to Resend. In Resend, I'm going to click Create API Key, and then we're going to give it a name. So give it a name and click Add. Okay, so copy the API key. Back over in Cursor, we're going to click the new file and we're going to name this file .env. So this is a very important file. It saves all our secrets and API keys. It's important that you keep this safe and you don't share this with anyone. And you can put in your Resend API key here and you're going to paste in the API key that you have. Back over again to our conversation window. Again, start a new conversation because this is something different that we're doing. So I've just dropped in a quick prompt here on the landing page. I'd like to connect the CTA and the email inbox so it gets sent to a certain email address. I've dropped in the API key. Can you go and search the web and get the best practice for integrating these two? And I'm actually going to add in @ and WEB, which is referencing the web, and that's going to use Cursor's inbuilt ability to search the web to check if there is up-to-date documentation on this. So here's where our first MCP server comes into play. I have Brave Web Search enabled, and this helps extend the basic functionality of the Cursor web. So you don't need to use this. This is completely a nice to have, and I find sometimes that I get better results from the Brave Web Search. So let's just go ahead and give permission to run that tool. So again, it's looking through the project and it's decided that it needs to check if the Resend package is installed, which is correct. And then it's going to look through and understand the current setup. And now it's asking me to install Resend. So we're going to hit run command here. Now, just to note, if you don't trust web search and you know exactly the documentation that you want to use, I'd always recommend doing that and adding that directly as context. So if you do a quick search, you can find the exact documentation for how to integrate Next.js and Resend. And you'll find increasingly companies are being very smart about how they create their documentation. I've seen that even OpenAI have a little copy feature up here so that I can copy this explicit instructions and give it to my model to see how to integrate both of them. You're going to see that more and more. So always check the documentation to see if there is an AI agent friendly version that you can copy. I go back over to Cursor and then I just basically paste in that URL and it adds it as context. But we've done that step, so we're going to ignore that for now. Okay, so it's stepped through all those changes. It's created an API route. Now, if we look over here to the left, we can see we have these new files and folders that were created. So we have the API, we have the route, and we have this route here. And this is essentially what it wanted to create. So let's just take a look at what it's done here. So it's imported Resend, and we actually set that up. It's using next request, then it's using a post, and then it's got some error handling in place and some text, etc. around the thank you message. So let's just accept that for now. Now you'll see again, it's telling me to run this, but it already is running. And if I look down here into our terminal, I can see that there's some kind of an error coming through, which is normal when the first time you run through a prompt. So let's take a look. So if I go over to the preview here at localhost 2001, you'll see that I'm getting this error coming back. It's a build error. And this is very common. It's around using the wrong component type for a use state. So we're going to just copy. So I would just paste this in here with Control V. But there is one other way that we can improve this process using MCP. Now again, you absolutely don't need this MCP. You could just copy and paste from your console all day long, but I just want to show you some of the features that MCP can offer you. Agent Desk offers this tool called Browser Tools, which you can install, and basically it allows Cursor to talk to and interact with your browser. It can see the console logs where all the errors occur and where you see logging, and then also it can take screenshots to see the current state of your application. So that's really quite useful. So to get Browser Tools set up, you need to have it installed as an extension on your browser. I'm using Edge in this case, and you'll see down at the bottom here as an extension to your usual tools, you'll see Browser Tools MCP. Just to open this, you hit Control-Shift-I, just like that. And if you've never seen this before, it's a really useful console for understanding the pages and apps that you're building. You can select any given component and see what it's made up of. And then you can also see all the console logs and errors that are coming through. And what we want to be able to do is feed that back to Cursor. So usually I can just copy, there's no problem in doing that. Let me switch this off. Usually I can just copy that and paste it in. It's just as quick, but this is just a different way of doing it and helps you understand how MCPs can work a little bit better. So in this case, I've just said I'm getting an error on the browser. Can you check? And then it's calling an MCP tool here. And you'll see here that it says it's checked the log. It found the error. We're using useState as a hook in this file, but we didn't make it a client component. So it's going to add useClient here. And now you see we've moved to a 200, which that means it's a working request. So now it's saying, let's check the page to see if it's working properly. It's going to take a screenshot. So a quick look at our console, and we don't have any errors. That's great. So we can close that. Now let's just see if this works. So I put in test@test.com, join waitlist, processing. So it's really good logging here. Apparently it's telling me I can't use test.com. So let's try a different address. And you can see it came through perfectly. It was sent and delivered, and it shows a preview of the response email that was sent. So that's pretty awesome. And we're now set up to start accepting emails and people to join our waitlist. So in just a couple of minutes, we've got a landing page for our project or our SaaS startup, whatever, ready to go. I think why wait around? Let's just actually get it up there. And then after that, we're going to iterate and improve the design. And I'm going to show you how you can just make it just look that little bit better. So the great thing about using Next.js as the base for our project is not only can it create websites, but it can create whole applications, and that's really powerful. And then there's a company called Resend, which is actually the creator of Next.js, which allows us to host our application really simply and deploy it. So Git is this really beautiful and powerful way to save our projects and share them on the web. It can be a little bit intimidating to start with, but just a couple of commands are going to take you a long way. And you can use tools like VS Code or Cursor or Windsurf to help you out in the process. So if we go up here to version control, you'll see that we have all these changed files. So these are files that we've been working on that are changed. So you can decide which ones you want to actually save to your project. And we're going to actually add them all. Now you'll see it's moved from changes to stage changes. So they're the ones that are ready to be saved. And if we click this little commit message button here, a commit message is basically a little message to future Rob or to anybody else working on the project about what actually happened during that step. And so the model here knows exactly what happens. It said we updated the project, we set up a new waitlist form, and I'm just going to hit commit there. And now you see on the right hand side here, just behind my head, it has moved ahead in time in terms of our save game, if you will. Okay, so we want to check that our project is ready to build. So we just have to run one or two commands to make sure that is the case. So again, I know what the commands are, but you may not. So you can always just ask for help by asking AI in the terminal. So I just say, how would I check if this next project is ready to build? And I just hit Control K or Command K to get that up. Hit return, and then it says npm run build. So we can actually just run that to see if it's successful. Now, 90% of the time you're going to get some error in this step, and it's going to say something like failed to compile, and usually it's going to break on something like linting. So linting is because we're using TypeScript, which is a good idea. It's just checking to make sure all your types are correct. Again, that's just TMI for this tutorial, but to solve this problem right now, we can just copy this here. This is exactly what's going wrong. And down here, we have this little button that says add to chat. So we just click on that, adds it over to the chat along with the context of what page it's on. So there's two different prompts you can put in here. I type in troubleshoot if I want to get an understanding of what the problem is myself, or if I want it to be explained to me so I know how to fix it in future, or just fix is the faster way. It'll just jump right through. Okay, so basically it was a load of unescaped apostrophes, and you can see that as well from the error codes, and it says it's gone and fixed that. and then it's going to run this command in order to check the linting. So we can actually just run that ourselves. We can type in npm run lint. And now you see we have this returned, no ESLint warnings or errors. So we should be in a position to build again. So if I just type up on my arrow key twice, I'll get my last command and I'll hit npm run build. And now we can see we've had a successful build. So we're in good shape. So let's take those changes here. Let's add them. And then let's generate our commit message. Refactor text to fix their errors. Let's commit that. So now we have everything set up and built. We're actually going to publish it to GitHub. So essentially we've been saving everything in Git locally, but now we want to actually push that to GitHub, which is in the cloud. And that's how we can actually store our projects so that other people can work on them, so that we can share them, and then also so that we can deploy them as web apps, either into containers or to Railway or Netlify or Vercel, wherever you want to deploy them. So GitHub is really powerful in that sense. So you need to have set up a connection to GitHub by creating an account, and then by hitting publish branch here, it's going to actually publish this branch into our GitHub repository. So it's asking me, do I want a private or public one? I'm just going to go with private for now. And then it's publishing and uploading the files, and it's up there already. And if we click this little button here, we can go straight and see it on GitHub. If we look at our project here, it's got a little README and it's got all our commits. And we can see that it was committed just a few minutes ago, and just double check that your .env file isn't in there with your API key. So that is all good. So it's sitting in a repository, but now we want to be out on the web so that people can view it. So over at vercel.com, you want to sign up. I recommend using your GitHub to actually get yourself signed up because it connects everything naturally. And if not, you're going to need to connect your Vercel account with your GitHub account. In there, I can just go and click Add New and Project. And then because it's connected to my GitHub already, I get to select which one I want to use. So I'm going to just import this one that was uploaded 2 minutes ago. We're going to give it a name, what project it's on. And then if we look through here, we can leave all these defaults the same. Now we're going to need an environment variable in place so that our API will work with Resend. So we're going to put that one in here by opening this. Now we need to paste in the environment key exactly from our .env file that we used earlier on. And then in here, you're going to paste in your API key. This is just a fake one to show you how it goes in there. You don't need any kind of inverted commas or anything else like that. And so that should be good to go. And we're just going to click deploy. Okay, and it's successfully deployed. Sometimes you'll have build issues. They'll appear in a drop-down underneath the deploy section. And what I would do is I would just copy those, paste them back into Cursor and see exactly what the issue is in relation to your project. And sometimes there can be issues that are specific to differences between how you deploy locally and on Vercel. So I would use a tool like Perplexity or ChatGPT with search enabled in order to diagnose what the issue might be there. So let's go straight over to the dashboard. And if I go and click this temporary domain here, our site is up and running and we have our form and everything ready to go. But what we have here is our site listed at a temporary domain. That's not exactly what we want for our final domain. We can pop over here to settings and then go to domains. So in domains, we would just click add here, type in the name of the domain. So in this case, it's LeverCast.com. And then we would make the necessary DNS changes that it asks us to do. So what it will ask you to do is set up a record or a CNAME record, and wherever you've registered your domain, whether that's domains.com or GoDaddy or Route 53 on AWS, you need to go in there and set up a TXT record or a CNAME or an A record. Just follow the instructions, and then after a certain amount of time, those will point back so that you've got a live and serving website. So in just a few minutes, we've created an entire landing page for our SaaS application or our project or for whatever it is, and it's looking pretty good and it's accepting people into the waitlist. So the important thing there is just to get it up and get it out there. Don't procrastinate and make sure it's starting to accept emails. But once we've had time to breathe, we can actually expand and improve the design if we want. Now I'm going to show you a few tips to really up your design game. So in this case, I'm just going to start a new chat again, and I'm going to give it a new prompt. The brand color is yellow, so let's use accents of that, and less of the navy, please. Let's use something like Tailwind's zinc color scheme instead for our dark mode. And let's put an icon on the LeverCast logo, maybe something like a feed or cast icon would work best. Okay, let's go with that and click send. Okay, that's an improvement. It's getting there and it took everything on board. So what else can we change next? So I've covered something called 21st Dev before on the channel. It's an aggregation of a lot of different design components that you can pull into your design just to give it that next level bit of polish. And if you look on the left hand side here, you've got all these different blocks that you can apply, everything from hero sections to buttons to scroll areas to really level up your designs. And they've got this new thing called Magic AI Agent. So basically it's an MCP server we can plug into Cursor, Windsurf, Klein, etc. and allows us to drop in design changes. And it's really actually pretty cool. So I encourage you checking it out. So if we go and click get started here, so you can just run this command here and it will run the installation locally, or you can just take the instructions that it has here and paste them into your MCP. I'm going to show you that now in a second. Here you'll see that I've added it in manually, and then you're going to put your own API key in there. You don't actually have to put it in. It'll be copied directly from your account setup, and then it should be all ready to go. So you'll see here it should be set up. You just click enabled and refresh and it should be up and running. If you're running on Windows, make sure that you've got Command-C in here to make sure that works, because it won't work otherwise. And if you're on a Mac or Linux, you just need to have the npx without the Command/C. Now we have a new theme, so let's start with a new conversation. So next up, I want to improve the professionalism of the design and see what we can do there. So if I go back over to Cursor again, we're going to use the components from 21st Dev to see if we can just improve it and make it look a little bit more polished. So you don't need an MCP with 21st Dev to do this. You can actually just go to any one of the components and copy the code. So if I go over here, we can go up here to copy prompt, and it will copy an optimized prompt for us that we just paste into the editor. So if I want to include this in the background of my app, I could just go and hit copy prompt here. I can say for most editors, and then just copy the prompt. But because we're using MCP, let's check out and see how that works. So I'm just going to hit send here with this prompt, take a look at the current design and suggest some design changes. So first up, it's taking a screenshot using Browser Tools. And now it's calling on the 21st Dev Magic MCP tool. So it's gone ahead and applied some improvements here, waitlist form, the hero section. And if we take a look, oh yeah, this is looking good. So it's added in little pills here, some extra oh, look at this. Nice. Yeah, we could do, oh, look, it's even got some framer motion going on. I mean, the time it would have taken me to do all this in the past, oh my God. I mean, think about all the time I spend hacking CSS and HTML to get what I want, and this is just being generated in seconds. I've been in design, I've been in web design and development for 20 years, and when I just see how quickly these things can be pumped out, it's great. Now, like a proper crafted website is going to go a level above this, of course, but we're talking about validating an idea, getting a fairly polished website out there very quickly. This kind of workflow is really compelling. And we have the form down the bottom and some other social verification. And look at these big improvements on our footer as well. Of course, none of these are set up. We'll have to remove these before we go live, but it's looking pretty good. So a few bonus things just to level up. Let's see if we can improve the logo a bit. So recently, ChatGPT rolled out some really great image generation abilities, which handles text really well. I've done videos about a year or two ago about how you could use Midjourney to generate logos, but ChatGPT has really leveled up in terms of its image generation. So let's have a pass at trying that. So I put in a prompt here. It was as simple as this: generate modern text-based SaaS logo for a company called LeverCast. And I think in one shot, it kind of knocked it out of the park. You might have to do several generations, but this was my first attempt. So then I took the existing logo that was created by Claude and I copied this in and I said, your generation is great. Now use this current logo attached to match the background colors and the primary color and keep your generated style. And it gave me this, which I don't know. This is just really great for something that we want to throw up really quickly. So we're going to take a screenshot of that and put it into our site. So this is the quick and dirty way. I'm just taking a quick screenshot here. You know, ideally we have a SVG version of this that can scale properly, but again, this is all about moving fast. So I went to my screenshots folder and just took a copy of that, and then in our public folder here, I'm just going to hit paste, and it's saying, I sure want to paste in. Yes, I do. And then we're going to right click and we're going to rename this to LeverCast logo. Now I'm going to drag my LeverCast logo down here, drop it in, and that's looking pretty sweet up there. Okay, there's probably a slight difference in the background because OpenAI basically did some color matching here. But if we're going to be perfectionists, we would just do a remove background here and have it as a transparent PNG. So it's looking pretty good in terms of a landing page. Maybe I just want to update these buttons here and change some of the fonts as a last change. In under 1 hour, we've created an entire pitch for our product. We've turned that into a landing page. We've generated a logo. We've set up a wait list so that we can actually start to generate interest and have interviews with anybody who shows up. And we have deployed to the web. If you compare this to how long it previously took and how long you would be charged for a website to be built, it takes hours, if not days and weeks, to figure out your positioning for your company. Then you need to write the copy and think about what your elevator pitch is. Then you're taking that elevator pitch and you need to convert that into copy for your design. Then you would need to go to Figma or Webflow or WordPress, pick out various different templates, edit those templates, shoehorn your content into it to make sure it works, mess with CSS, HTML, all the different things, and then actually end up deploying it. We have done that entire process in 1 hour.